The first time this semester, someone turned in to me proof that they attended the symposium. Excellent. That person will get an extra 2 points added to this person's grade this semester. Now, I had a little conference with a student in another class who's really disturbed because this person is has a D average in my class and has A's in other classes. And I'm wondering, hey, what is wrong? And I did quite a bit of thinking about this. Thought, well, maybe it's some people just don't do well on a multiple choice test. Even though, believe me, you can't do well on a multiple choice test, why can't you? You surely would do worse on a fill in the blank test. So I thought, well, why not try an essay test? Now, so what I'm saying, I'm going to say this to the other class. If you think you can write a good essay, about 2 pages long, 2 pages of essay, on any of these topics we've been talking about, or we'll talk about next time. What went wrong in Africa? How did Islam rise to become so powerful? What does Islam teach? What were the failings of the Amerinds or the American Indians? Again, those persons who are doing better than a 70, I would rather you go ahead and try to keep with the multiple choice test. I checked. Now, these things might take a week to process. I checked just a couple hours ago, and as of right now, nobody in either of my 2 classes have dropped the course. Now, we have people who have stopped attending without dropping. Now, they might, if they dropped yesterday, by this time next week, I'll know it. But as of right now, nobody has dropped the course. So I want to give you a chance to bake it. And again, folks, there is another side to this. Who attends the symposium to get extra credit? Does anybody know? It's usually what kind of student? Somebody who already has an A anyway. Who turns in their paper early for extra credit? An A student, someone who already has an A is pretty well sewed up anyway. But nevertheless, I'm going to make some attempt to help some of you get your grade up. Again, if you'll cooperate with me. Now, if you're at the symposium, there's been about 3 of them here of late. And one of them, I believe, is dealing with the topic of physics. Hey, history includes physics. Go ahead and attend. I'll give you credit for it. One of them deals with, let's see, one that's coming up next week. Anyway, they do have them. They've had them ever since I've been here, and I started a couple of semesters ago giving credit, and very few students will take me up on it. Just like when I say I'll give 6 points to the persons who turn in their paper early, I'll tell you something else about me. I'm human too. Persons who turn their paper in early, I'll often just be lenient with them and overlook a certain little thing. And persons who turn their paper in late, I might read it again just to see if I can't find another excuse to take more points off. I mean, hey, folk, I'm human too. And, but I'm lenient towards people who I think are trying. And I can be a little bit harder on persons who I don't think are. But anyway, just I've written 4 questions down here, and you can pick one of them, write a 2-page essay on them. All right. Any other questions now? Yes?
So with the symposium, where do you find that?
They're on, if you check your email regularly, they're on emails.
Okay.
They put notices
They
up
put
by the
notices.
cafeteria.
By the cafeteria, okay, thank you. They put
Right
notices.
next to the bookstore, that
Okay.
bulletin board, they usually up there.
But if you check your emails, they're in, unless you blocked some of the emails, they're on your emails. But yes. Anyway, some of you still have not turned in contracts, and folk, this semester is now officially half over. The second half of it is about to begin. And most of your grade is still to be determined. So if you feel like, well, I'm doing poorly in this class, again, I was quite pleased to see that as of this morning, I didn't see anybody who had dropped. I still have 34 pupils registered for this class and 35 in the other. So that made me feel pretty good about it. But again, I have some pupils in both classes who are not attending class. Maybe they're listening to my lectures online. And those of you who are following me online might have noticed I was slower getting the lecture on yesterday than I normally am. The reason is YouTube would not take my Microsoft MSN browser anymore. So I had to switch over to a different browser. I switched to Google, and the other take Google. Same document. And no, they wouldn't take it because it came from MSN, and it took me a few hours to figure that out. So I was a little bit slower yesterday getting them online. But anyway, Monday's lecture is online, along with, all right. So much for that. All right, Islam. Now, there will be nothing on the test about the Umayyads and Abbasids. I mean, that is important, folk, but believe it or not, I never did learn the difference when I was in school myself. Again, when I was in school, Islam was just we just skipped over it. We barely noticed it. I mean, I have a 700-page history book at home about the world since 1500, probably the world since 1900. And it just covers from 1900 to 1969, the year I took the course. And there's only about half a page written on these Islamic countries. That's how important these Islamic countries were to us during this time period, during this about 69-year period between 1900 and 1969. It just didn't matter to us. Today, all that has been turned around. But nevertheless, don't worry about the words Umayyad. Don't worry about the words Abbasid. Something I did not mention Monday that I realized I probably should have. I mentioned the zero. An Iranian mathematician created the number zero. Also, the Arabs are credited with creating the number system that we use today. Numbers, the numerals 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6. Thanks in large part to Arab mathematicians, we can now teach elementary school students how to do arithmetic. Long division, addition, subtraction, multiplication. Again, you cannot do arithmetic with Roman numerals. You cannot do arithmetic, division. You cannot do algebra with Roman numerals either. But the Arabs are credited with, I mean, the numbers we use, again, are called Arabic numerals. These are Arabic numerals. All right. Essentially, what happened was the Arab Empire had this part of the world united for a short time, and then they started fighting among themselves. But during the time they were united, they made inroads. They conquered, what is today, Iraq, and they still hold it to this day. They conquered Iran and hold it to this day, conquered Syria and hold it. They conquered Palestine. They've lost that. They went on and conquered North Africa, Egypt, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, and they're holding all that to this day. Then they crossed the Strait of Gibraltar here, and they conquered Spain. At this time, Spain was all one country. Conquered Spain, they held it for about 700 years. They went on in intending to conquer France, but by this time the movement had run out of steam. They were fighting among themselves, they were divided, but they were stopped in France by a man named Charles Martel, and keep him in mind, we're going to remember him. We're going to run into him later. Charles Martel at the Battle of Tours. Tours, a battle. Now, I keep referring to this, but this book was popular when I was a youngster, folks. It was called The 10 Most Decisive Battles of World History. I've already mentioned how the Battle of Adrianople figured in. Battle of Adrianople, where the Roman legions lost to the German barbarians. The Battle of Tours is where the French army, led by Charles Martel, defeated a Muslim group of plunderers. I don't want to call them an army, but they're a group of plunderers, and sent them running back into Spain and stopped the Muslim advance into Europe. Now, eventually, it took 700 years. The Spanish began to fight off the Muslims, and they fought and fought. And finally, in 1492, they expelled the last of them from Spain. And the two monarchs who did it were Ferdinand and Isabella. Any of you heard of Ferdinand and Isabella from another story? The story of Columbus. But Ferdinand and Isabella did not help Columbus until they had driven the Moors out of Spain. The year was 1492. And in August of that year, Columbus set sail and landed in San Salvador on October 12th. And 2 days ago, we celebrated that day. We celebrated on Monday, October 13th. They now celebrate a lot of these holidays on Monday because of economics. The 12th occurred on Sunday this year. Anyway, the Spanish, they had a Visigoth kingdom there that had been in existence for about 300 years. It was a weak kingdom at best, but the Spanish spent some 700 years fighting them and eventually drove them out. And again, a large part of the problem was, number one, Islam was disunited, and number two, Islamic troops tend to not do well fighting in an area where there's a lot of mountains, where there's a lot of brush, a lot of trees, a lot of forest. They just simply, they'll do well fighting in an area like Morocco, Algeria, a wide open area with no significant amount of trees, no forest. Egypt has no forest. They do well fighting in those regions, but they have not done well fighting in regions where there are a lot of trees.